We're now joined by Zimbabwean human rights lawyer and representative for Mary Mubaiwa, Beatrice Mtetwa. Ms. Mtetwa, good morning. Finally, glad to have you on the line this morning. Certainly a number of allegations that have been leveled against your client. But first, let's talk about her health at the moment. How is Mary Mubaiwa doing?
She has been unwell long before she was arrested. I think most people are aware that while her husband was being treated prior to her arrest, she also was under treatment because she had been in the bomb blast that happened in Bulawayo in 2018, and she was one of those who were injured. And at the time that she was married to the VP, of course, she was allowed to go outside for medical treatment, and she actually was under a specialist doctor in South Africa, Mr. Van Heerden, at the time of her arrest. So it is an open secret that she was under medical attention and being treated before she was arrested. And it boggles the mind why she cannot continue receiving that treatment whilst her husband is able to receive that treatment, to travel outside the country to receive that treatment. And she has deteriorated to a point where the doctors have said, we cannot save the right forearm, it has to be amputated. And this was said right at the outset in 2020 in court when we sought permission for her to go and be treated in South Africa. The court was told that if she does not get the specialist treatment, she risks having her arm amputated.
Now, we've seen several visuals, certainly, and images. Videos included where Mary Mubaiwa has been seen at a hospital, or rather at the courts, on a stretcher bed, I think confirming her state. So it appears to be forced to attend court hearings in that state. Now, what has the court's justification been for denying her permission to leave the country to seek treatment? Is she considered a flight risk?
Well, the thinking is that if she goes out of the country, she will not come back, which really is strange because I've had many clients who are not half as ill as she is, who've been able to go to South Africa and elsewhere for medical attention, and they have come back. And I don't see why she wouldn't come back, particularly because the charges against her are very weak. Yes, we are aware that this is against a powerful man in the country, but the bottom line is the charges are very weak. She may very well get convicted in the lower courts, but her chances of succeeding in the superior courts are extremely high because the evidence that has been laid so far in the cases where she has gone to court is so weak that if she was not who she was, she most definitely would never even have been put on her defense.
Well, there are a number of charges that I'd like you to talk us through, if you can. One of those is she's being tried for allegedly breaching the Marriages Act. The VP, in his defense, said he was too ill to have signed papers officializing the marriage, if you will. She's allegedly tried to have killed her former husband while he was in hospital in South Africa. And she also faces charges of fraud and money laundering.
That's correct. The trial on the alleged marriage case has been ongoing, and the main witness who was supposed to come in and say that she actually did that came and said the exact opposite. And we are waiting to see how the court will find on that. The allegation that she tried to kill him in South Africa has not been pursued to date. And, you know, the vice president was under guard 24/7 for a start. Secondly, the hospital where he was at has CCTV. And we have asked for that CCTV footage to show that indeed she did try to do that because there would be evidence of it. And it has actually not been forthcoming. There are other allegations of money laundering.
Mr. Mtetwa, if you'd allow me to come in there, I'd imagine that if Mary Mubaiwa went in to see her husband in the room, that she'd be allowed to do that, and that would not be under guard. And would there be CCTVs in the actual ward or in the actual room?
Well, the hospital says there is, but the doctors would be able to say so, how she tried to kill him. Because the doctors would be able to say that, oh, there was this, connection that she took out. They would say how it is alleged she tried to kill him. We have not heard that. And that allegation has not been pursued as we speak. Precisely because it is just an allegation that's meant to throw things at her, more to justify the treatment that she is now receiving than because there is actually evidence that she tried to kill him. She had been with him in many other hospitals. She was with him at home. Why would she wait to go and try and kill him in South Africa when she could easily have put a pillow over his face at home? Why would she have done that? The mind boggles why she would risk doing it in South Africa when she could easily do it in her bedroom at home.
Well, I suppose if I was to answer that, I'd suggest that if she did it at home, it would be pretty obvious who would have done it. But what I suppose the next question that we would like to get from you is certainly, is the judiciary, in your opinion, in Zimbabwe partial, if you will, or partisan? And the reason I ask is obviously because you've given us examples, not in detail, of some of your clients who've been allowed to leave the country and seek medical treatment. Excuse me. In your mind, do you feel that the VP has a role to play in her inability to leave the country and seek treatment?
Well, the judiciary and the NPA are supposed to be impartial and independent. They are not supposed to take instructions from anybody. But we have seen, for instance, in the trial related to the marriage, that the vice president's lawyers, who ought to have nothing to do with a criminal prosecution, because that ought to be between the state and the accused, have been coming to court religiously. And they do give instructions to the prosecution. On Monday, for instance, when we came to report that she had been hospitalized the night before, the vice president's private lawyers were there. They took the chief prosecutor out of the courtroom to speak to him. So there can be no question that the identity of the complainant in this case has played a large role in how the cases against Mary have progressed. There can be no question that even where the vice president might not say to judicial officers, do X, Y, there is the fear that it is expected that I might find in a certain way. We know that the impartiality and independence of the judiciary, particularly at the magistrates court level, is severely compromised. And we are able to say this because there's just a coterie of magistrates who get given certain cases. And you can predict their findings with your eyes closed because they are trusted to do what is expected of them. This is why you find certain politically inclined cases are not given to the other magistrates who simply look at the law and the facts. So, in answer to your question, there are pockets of the Zimbabwean judiciary that are severely captured by the political elite. And then at the High Court, we've got a fair number of independent judges, but then we have a fair number of fearful judges. They might know what the right thing to do is, but they are too afraid to do it. The Supreme Court and the Constitutional Court are severely compromised, and that's an open secret. So we cannot talk of independence there. It was the Supreme Court, for instance, that denied her access to her children, and for the past, since December 2019, she has not seen her 3 young children. And the Supreme Court has said that is okay, basically, and that can't be an independent and impartial court because children, in terms of our Constitution, have rights. They have a right to family life. They have a right to be heard. And the Supreme Court thought it is okay for a mother not to see her children.
Now, while we're speaking about rights, Give us a perspective, your perspective rather, on the human rights situation in Zimbabwe.
Well, the human rights situation in Zimbabwe has not changed from when Robert Mugabe was the president. There was a slight period where there was a bit of euphoria, people thinking that things would change, but that quickly changed in January 2018, and we know that the human rights situation in Zimbabwe right now is just as bad as it was under Robert Mugabe. We've seen people being gunned down by soldiers for exercising rights that they have in the Constitution. We just had a by-election, recently, and we know that rallies for the opposition were being stopped by the police, unlawfully being stopped by the police, by the way, whereas ZANU-PF, the ruling party, could have its rallies without any problem. We know that members of the opposition have been harassed, including one who was killed in Kwekwe during the run-up to the by-elections that we had recently. And although it is known who actually murdered him, they have not actually been arrested. So we know that the human rights situation in Zimbabwe continues to be quite volatile. Civil society activists, journalists, political activists, opposition members are all targets. They remain being targets. We have a state media that only has one voice, and one voice for the ruling party and nobody else, despite the Constitution actually saying they are obliged to cover all political players. So yes, the human rights situation in Zimbabwe remains perilous.
Ms. Mtetwa, appreciate your time this morning. We were speaking to human rights lawyer and representative for Mary Mubaiwa, the former wife of the Vice President of Zimbabwe, Constantino Chiwenga. And she was unpacking for us the situation around her illness. Well, today